soon as you guys get done, we'll start.
Sorry, all right. Hey, we're going to get in trouble. 20 seconds in.
Go ahead and call the meeting to order. First up is non-public sessions on October 4th. Bob, I think there's some changes you wanted to make to that. Did you write them in yet, or?
I did write them in.
Okay. How would you go about discussing it if we're in public? Is there any question?
Or would you like me to write them in at some point tonight and then we can carry it over into
Sure.
public or something? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we can go into non-public, I guess, at the end if we have time.
Okay.
So we'll pass it over to those for
Yep.
now. November 1st, Selectmen's minutes. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Have not reviewed these yet, so.
Oh. So I did.
Yeah.
And,
Good.
take your time.
Good minutes can make, I guess.
Yeah. It's only your hockey game you're missing.
Did we have a motion on that?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve the job description work session minutes from November 8th, 2012.
I'll second that. How these look to everyone? Good?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Questions? Aye.
Aye.
Brings us to public comment. Is there anything at this point in time? Seeing nothing, we'll move right on to the police report. Carl? Good evening.
Aye.
Okay, the last 2 weeks we've assisted a state trooper that was on DWI rescue. Tim assisted him. He was just the ambulance. I went to the transfer station with John Andrew, got injured. We've had 8 all support alarms. We are looking into a report of a disorderly subject on one of the side roads. There seems to be some type of conflict between some homeowners and one's trying to sell and another one. Their problem is one's a weekender, so catching up with them. We assisted the state police with a motor vehicle accident just past the town line of the Notch. The elections went well. I took a report of lost keys. We did 2 civil standbys between a landlord and a tenant who are at odds. In fact, it is in the court. It looks like it is being resolved as the tenant has moved most of the stuff out. Which I will get the rest out very shortly. I assisted the ambulance with a gentleman that was having some heart issues. Fire company with the alarm at a restaurant, false alarm. Pretty the subject for activity with the school. Someone turned in some medications that were not being needed anymore, but had potency value. It's just the fire company with an alarm at a residence that was actually triggered by dust from drywall. I assisted the state highway department by running a radar by where that new temporary traffic light is on 16 just north of the village. They exposed it 30 on the way up if you're coming south, and people are having a hard time doing that. So we went back there and some radar for them. I received a complaint over reckless operating box truck company in Notch. Both our cruisers now have been totally outfitted for weather, so they're all set to go. And at the last meeting, I mentioned to you the possibility of somebody for a part-time position with us. And I would like to put forth the name of Florence with the request to hire a part-time police officer. She is our current animal control officer, and she has expressed interest now for months about coming part-time. I've had all summer, all fall to observe her and interact with her. I feel that she would be an asset to us. She's got a very good head on her shoulder. And I would like that permission.
Yeah, so I understand correctly, you're not suggesting something is going to increase the budget under any circumstances, as far as what you already have in your budget?
As far as what we currently have right now, the part-time officer that we have right now, Saul Rossman, that we've had since 2004, has never really worked out the way we wanted. He's a great guy, does a good job, he's never really at the level. So by and large, there's a huge chunk of our budget that's always usually left over. And for this year, the remaining, this year is much the same. There's just a big chunk left, so there wouldn't be any change to this year's budget.
What about for next year? Are you looking to increase that line item in the budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My preliminary budget for overall next year does have a decrease in it.
For the budget overall?
Yeah, the reduction.
How many hours of the part-time officer do you count on?
Well, it varies. By law, they can have up to 1,300 a year. But right now, we basically have coverage from 7 in the morning to midnight, 5 days a week. Saturday and Sunday, there's 10 hours, that's it. So there could be opportunity to increase Saturdays and Sundays. I know that there's a chief's meeting once a month at Troop that I like to attend. I get a lot of information out of there, updates the laws and changes in laws and whatnot. But I haven't made hardly any this year simply because they're on Thursdays and there's nobody here. And I'm more comfortable in town, so there could be another opportunity for coverage there. It could be when vacation time, personal days, someone's schedule, special events.
So how many hours did Saul work last year? Do you know? Can you give us an approximation on that?
For the year 2011, I don't think he patrolled one day.
Okay. Any idea how many hours he puts in? Because I know he has value in...
Yeah, he was essential in outfitting our latest cruiser,
Right.
and he put hours in on that. Off the top of my head, no, I don't know.
$1,500 in the budget for the part-time officer. Is that what it is?
That's what it currently is.
And how much of that do you expect will be unused this year?
Probably 1,200 or better.
So we spent roughly $300 on the part-time officer.
I don't even think that.
And if he was available more, we'd have opportunities to use him more.
Correct.
Wasn't there more in the budget at one time for part-time?
There was. When we got the third full-time officer, it was basically
Reduced at that point.
Yeah, it was gutted.
Okay. All right. Well, there are numbers and everything else that we'll have discussions about, but I can certainly speak to it just seems like, as far as the person goes, obviously Lauren's enthusiastic about this, and she's been dependable as the animal control officer. I think if there was one concern that I ever heard anybody express when we brought her in as the animal control officer, when we felt like we had to make some sort of a move because we weren't getting a response from the animal control officer we were in contract with. The one concern was that, well, why don't we have one of our officers fill that role? And this clearly would be an opportunity where we would actually be doing that. So, if we need to bring somebody in and we've got it in the budget, somebody that we can count on, so that we can free you up to do your chief duties once a month or however often it is, and fill hours, it just seems like it would be a good fit.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some numbers, I guess, for next year's budget.
Yeah, I say it's gonna go down
Yeah.
overall.
The overall is, we'll see a decrease.
But like, what would there be an increase in the part-time budget?
Yes.
And how much that would be?
I think it would be up to 4,000.
And is that including the $500 animal control officer stipend, or would that be separate?
No, I think that's a separate item.
Which would also go to that.
They're separate.
What's involved in putting somebody through the part-time officer training academy?
That doesn't cost us anything. And it's a 200-hour course. And it's quite cumbersome. There's 4 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays up in Littleton, and then Saturday, all day Saturday down in Concord. So the person has to want this, if they put themselves through this, especially during the winter months.
What's being reduced in the budget in order to keep the decrease from going next year?
We have a detailed budget for doing details, and we're going to cut that in half.
Have you been using it?
No, so that's, it's nice to have it there if we need it, but my feeling is that we can do with half of that.
Point out about that is that the $10,000 budget for detail work is a gross appropriation number. It's actually offset with revenue. So you may be reducing that part of the budget, but it doesn't affect as far as the tax rate is concerned. So that's the only thing to consider when you're looking at that number anyway, as far as the overall budget is concerned. That is part of your overall budget number, but that number doesn't impact the tax rate because it's offset with revenue. I personally I like the idea, and certainly support hiring Lauren for the position. I think we're going to, as far as the budget for next year is concerned, we're going to have to have some probably broader discussions about that in and of itself, as what my thinking is.
Sure, yeah.
Because again, who the part-time person is, I mean, theoretically you can fill out the number of people that it made logistical sense, but as far as how it impacts the budget is kind of a separate discussion, I think, anyway. $1,500 to $4,000 jump, big picture things isn't that much, but I think that we have to have some discussions on what's going to justify that a little bit further than what we're probably going to get through this evening anyway. But as far as Lauren herself is concerned, I mean, you're really kind of looking to get the ball rolling as far as her position to be. So that's kind of the first part of the process is to get there. So I mean,
Right.
I don't see any reason why we can't clear that hurdle this evening. Do we feel different about that? Or?
No, and I think that the budget questions that need to be answered and will give us direction on just how much that we could expect that officer to be available for.
Okay.
Maybe it's every other meeting, we need to go down, something, we'll look at that.
Okay.
So are you looking for us to hire her at this point in time then? Or?
Yeah, well, if you give the okay, then, I can get that taken care of.
And I guess that's just sort of confused at the moment. We could either need to make a motion to hire someone, or we can just give you the verbal consent. And that's the direction that we're willing to go. And I guess which is it you're looking for at this point in time?
This is the direction. you're okay to proceed.
Does anybody see any issue with it, proceeding to vet this out and see what gets next in?
I wasn't sure if there was a question.
Well, I was just, if I was not online, I'd make a comment.
No,
if I could.
Sure.
Just an FYI for you, some of us are a little dated here, but back 1975 to 1979, we had a hire of 3 special officers. In fact, we only had 1 full-timer, and we went to 2. We still maintain special officers, and I would encourage you to look at this. And one of the things that you haven't seen for a lot of years, we used to have an officer every Saturday and every Sunday, foot patrol in the village. Some of you that may remember that. I happen to know it because I wore out a lot of shoes. We haven't seen the winter conditions that we've seen back in some of those years, and a tremendous influx of people, and we've lost parking in the village. If we should get one of those kind of winters, and you get a lot of snow, a lot of weekends, you're going to think you're lucky size you got someone you can almost actually put down there on foot patrol and keep a lane open in the town. I don't know if anybody here remembers those days, but it's certainly, it's certainly, we haven't seen that. We used to have the frost shop parking lot and a lot of things, and it's gone, so just keep that in the back of your head. So I would encourage you to really look at this when budget time comes. That should we get fortunate enough to have a really heavy winter, businesses all depend on that, you may very well thank yourselves that you got some extra help.
That's an interesting point, and I would just assume that they're part of the training academy is involved in traffic control, and
Yes.
it comes out of their
Yeah,
I'm ready to go with that.
yeah, and even after the part-time academy, there's a field training period where any new hiring has to ride along, and there's certain things that have to be checked off on prior to being out on the road.
Interesting.
I remember the winter of 04, before Sean was hired. I think it was maybe Friday, but Saturday, I think it was. I worked that day, I was home. There's nobody on, it was snowing. The ski moose had a party, and there was a lot of parking. The tail truck was coming downhill. State highway truck was coming this way, Maine, and just due to all the cars and the traffic, it was at a standstill. And I got the call, and I had to come out and get cars moved and get things going. So that's a very likely scenario.
Yeah. Interesting points. I'm glad you brought it up. Get out of there.
Bill?
The person that we select to go to school, at what point do they go on to our payroll? Is that something, the time that's involved in it, they don't go on our payroll at that point? That's on them, right?
The training you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
training's on it. And then what happens when they come out of training and then like they have to ride with you and that,
Well,
go through the process? At what point do they start
right,
on our payroll?
Once she gets hired and she is qualified, you take her up the range qualified with a gun, she's actually authorized. You have a few months that you can ride around with a certified officer prior to going to the academy. So anytime riding around in uniform would be on the clock. The school itself, which is, the tab is picked up by the state, they pay for the schooling.
I guess, sorry, Bill, just to clarify there, I mean, she would go on the payroll when she was hired by the Board of Selectmen as a part-time officer. She wouldn't start receiving paychecks until she actually did work, so, which would be controlled by the chief. So if he's got $1,500 in his budget for part-time help, and that's the number he'd be looking to use for that. So the person wouldn't be on the payroll until hired by the Board of Selectmen anyway. And so she would have that occur before she went to the police academy. But it's not that she'd be, under any circumstances, like now or in the future, would be pulling weekly compensation from the town anyway. It would be as-needed basis is what we're talking about here, if I understand correctly.
And you, the selectman, would not hire her until she was certified, is that correct?
We'd hire her when Carl comes back to us and says, I'm looking to have her hired at this point in time.
Which is what I am right now. Before you can attend the academy, you have to be hired by a law enforcement agency. And the hiring process is a long process. And if we can get her at least hired on books now, that can help out and really speed things up.
Thanks for my question, because that clarifies it then, because it's, so what you're looking for us is to hire her at this point in time.
Yes.
You don't have to open that up for advertisement or anything like that? It's just, you just select somebody?
If you hire somebody within the department, you can just hire. I don't know that you even have to hire to put out, but even in this case, we have somebody that we have gotten to know and has shown an interest.
I understand that part. I didn't know, but publicly, like coaching positions, you have to put out to everybody. You just can't hire somebody who's close to the system.
Technically, police officers do fill kind of a unique role as far as an employment standpoint is concerned. There's a couple different ways of going about it, and it depends on what the use is going to be. For instance, the selectmen have the ability to hire police officers on their own for reasons that we want to, but when this is going to fall under the supervision of the police chief, the way the hiring process will work is that the police chief would make a recommendation to the board to hire X person, and we would make a motion to do so. And consider it and vote.
So tonight you're making that recommendation?
I am.
So technically this person could start pulling a paycheck then after this evening if...
Well, no,
You have to have
I'm,
a certain level of certification first.
well, first of all, the person has to be sworn in. No, you could, as long as you're qualified to be gun, you could theoretically start riding along. We're not there yet because we're not complete. We haven't totally completed everything. So she would not probably do anything this year.
So really what you're looking for is the ability to get her into the academy is why logistically we need to hire her. So that she's-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with it.
Well, then I'll make the motion that we accept the chief's recommendation and agree to hire Lauren Sinnott as the part-time police officer for Town of Jackson.
Second.
Any more discussions?
I have nothing further.
All those in favor? Aye.
That's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Jim, I see you sitting back there. Were you coming this evening to?
No, not anything specific, much I think we do, but I don't,
No, I didn't know that you thought you were here for on the agenda. You're just here to watch.
no, there might be.
No life.
Probably may, yeah. I might discuss something, but I see you got something on your vacation policy stuff.
Sure, yeah. Be a little while before we get to that, but yeah, I just didn't know if you're here for this. So we'll move on to the Old Library Management Committee Articles of Agreement and bylaws. John, I gotta be honest with you, I didn't review that yet. I haven't had the time, but it's certainly come up.
I got colds, I'll actually say that here, won't breathe on you. Marilyn Rhodes and Susan May are also here from the committee. Actually, this is just to close the loop. I presented the last meeting, kind of suggested that it might be a good idea to have the town attorney review them. And just to close the loop, and so that Diane goes and forward to the town attorney, she has to bring it back to hear the selectmen say, yeah, that probably is a good idea, it's a town building, and this is a 501c3 for that building. So that's kind of why we're here.
And I guess what my question I have, I didn't look into it much yet, but, you know, the 501c3 that you're talking about is a private organization, and you don't need our approval for the Articles of Agreement for the 501c3, correct?
Not, well, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable without having your, I don't know if approval is the right word, your blessing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, it's a town building, and it's just a cross-check that's open and apparent and involves you as our town representative, so. Technically, no, but I don't think the committee would feel comfortable necessarily going forward without understanding your concerns and trying to address them.
And I guess that's just what, I mean, I'm all for it, and I guess my only question at this point in time is why we actually even need the town attorney to review the articles. I mean, just,
I just have never done it before, and again, I think it's unique that against a town building. I just wouldn't want to create a conflict of any sort within the town about it. And I just don't know enough about it. Or anyone on the committee doesn't have that depth of experience.
And from that point of view, it does seem to make sense to have an attorney just review. I mean, those are pretty standard documents that all of us before and wouldn't represent a lot of time. And as opposed to finding out down the road that something key is missing or something's in there that shouldn't be, and then having to backtrack and try and make things right. That's basically
it, yeah. It's kind of unique, and I've never done it before.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think providing that level of support for all the work you've done seems to be logical. So I'm all in support of passing those over to the attorney and having him take a look at it.
We're in agreement with that, I need to just.
Will we facilitate that?
Sure, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Building matters. The only permit we have before us is the one for Hannah Equity Partners. Has Andy reviewed this one yet? Do you know?
I'm sorry.
Do you know if Andy's reviewed the Hannah Equity Partners building permit?
He has not sent in a recommendation. He's still trying to get to the bottom of whether or not there is adequate 50-foot setback from the road right away. I would recommend tabling it for next week. I saw him yesterday, and that's where we're at, and I still haven't seen the recommendation coming from yesterday to now, so.
Next week or?
I'm sorry, did I say next week? No,
Okay,
it's December 6th.
Remember?
December 6th is the next time.
So a few weeks from now, anyway. And I guess from that perspective, it really doesn't matter too much. Have you seen the application? This is one where we had sent the notice of violation to.
Right.
He did, in fact, fill out an application. So that satisfied the number one, or one of the concerns in the notice of violation. So I mean, I think as far as any actions that we'd be taking from the violation notice at this point in time, I don't see any reason to pursue anything in the immediate future as far as the notice of violation is concerned. He's certainly at least fulfilled one of the stipulations that we had asked for in the permit. I had reviewed the application itself. The value on the work is under $10,000 that's submitted by Hamlet Equity Partners. However, part of this is a deck that was being built outside the footprint of the building, so at the very least, that portion of it would seem to require a building permit to be anyway. It would have to be approved by a size. So the only question remaining on that really is the setback. And the measurement that's provided from them is 66 feet, which is well outside the 50-foot setback. From there, I had gone up and looked at it myself, and I'd say it's far more than the 30 feet that Andy had indicated anyway. I didn't take out a measuring tape or I didn't pace anything off, but again, it seemed 66 feet to me, it seems to me to be pretty much on the spot, but
Did you talk to Andy about that?
Yes, and his issue is that the Hannah hired a music survey
To measure?
to figure out where the boundary line is and where the right of road starts. And that's where the unknown is for Andy, because he hasn't seen the survey from any music. And his question is, where does the right of road start and end? And that can't be determined. And he can't verify the 61 feet that they indicate on their plan. He can't.
66 feet.
Yeah, he can't certify, he can't, verify it.
I guess
He's
my,
lacking information from
He'll be able to
survey.
determine that when he gets a copy of the survey?
He would like, that's what he's trying to do, is get a copy,
And
yes.
that would allow him to determine that.
That's what he'd like.
we've got, here's Route 16,
Mhm.
214 feet of frontage on Route 16,
Mhm.
60 feet to the corner of the existing building that's there.
Mhm.
The deck that they built is inside of that,
Indebted.
I'm assuming by 6 feet, which looked to be about right to me. And I guess my only question would be, why are we determining setbacks? I mean, that's,
Well, we had that conversation at the last meeting, and it was the homeowner's responsibility to provide that
Yeah.
information. Is what that when we worded the whole violation order, that was the conversation we had around it. So, and so the survey is really what you need to, or what you would expect the homeowner to provide in order to verify distance.
Just, he would like supporting documentation.
Sure. Is the building, is there building currently going on up there?
no, the deck's in place. So that's what I was going to suggest anyway. The deck's there. We've cited the violation, we started that part of the process. If it's something that we still have all the authority we need to execute this, I don't see the reason why we can't pass this over until December. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to affect them, because the deck's already there. I don't think it'll affect us, because we've already got all the authority that we need. So then we can give any chance to look it over anyway.
But then Andy will see the survey and be like to come in and verify. And I would really like to have Andy here for that meeting.
Because I'd also kind of like to ask a little bit about how, just what his process for the setback was, because again, when I spoke to Andy about it, he said 30 feet, and you go up and see it, it's clearly, it almost seems like almost a relevant issue, but, so we can just pass this over for now and discuss it in December.
Do you want a motion for that?
I don't think we need to.
Okay.
We've got, I don't know, what they received this was, date of application's 8/28. You know what the date on here is, August 28th?
I don't.
What was the check written? So I copied that.
Check was written November 1st. So that's
That's
the date.
about
Must have been
what
10/20.
He wants it backdated to when he started construction.
He signed this 11/9, so that's when we got 30 days from, in my mind, thinking from 11/9 to consider it, which our next meeting is December 6th, so I don't see any reason why we can't just pass over this until then.
Does the board want me to ask Andy to be here at the meeting for December 6th?
Yeah, that would be good if he could be here, so that we can discuss that anyway. But Howie, determine setbacks up there. I mean, the right of way is, I mean, what I think, did Jay leave? Hey, Mom, can you grab Jay?
He went.
He left already.
Oh, you did?
I passed him on, no.
No, his stuff's right here.
Oh, he has it,
Jay
okay.
Henry?
Yeah.
He's still out here?
Yeah, we'll be right back in, Mom, sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to ask Jay what
Yes, we're pick up.
what he thinks as far as what the right of way is. Jay typically goes 10 feet off the side of the road.
The right of way is from the middle, though.
It is, and it's, right of way is,
50 feet from the middle? What's the right of
They're
way?
all different.
they're all different.
Route 16.
Route 16.
No, that's one of the problems, is location of right-of-ways is always question as to where they actually are. There's a lot of them,
Well, when a road's established is when the right of way is supposed to be established. And the problem in New Hampshire, and particularly in Jackson, is that most of the time when the roads were built, we didn't establish right of ways. So it's almost like we can make it up as we go along sort of thing.
well, not everywhere.
When the state, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
When the state put that Route 16 corridor in through there, they probably established a right of way. And then it's the right of way is determined by, like you said, Bob, you start, let's say the right of way is, typically right of ways are 66 feet in New Hampshire. But it really has to do with what the right of way established at that point in time is. Right of ways, you start from the center line of the road, you measure out 66 feet, you would measure out 33 feet in both directions. That's the right of way.
And your setback is supposed to go off the edge of the right-of-way.
And your setback's supposed to go off the edge of the right of
I
way.
went through that at my house because the government's right-of-way is 66 feet. Didn't know where the edge of the right-of-way is, so you gotta go. So now I gotta build 50 feet off the front. I gotta go 80, 50, 60, 83 feet off the center line of the road because we tried to guess it center line.
And the reason why I'm discussing this is because, I mean, you have to go 50 feet from the edge of the right of way, and you're putting your building in
I basically can't have a garage at my house, even a small garage, because it's a small piece of land because of that right of way, because of the distance off the front.
so the way you determine the right of way for this property here is we have to ask the state what the right of way is for Route 16 in that area. Do you know, Jay? It's right by your parents' house.
It's probably 66, Kenny'd have to tell you, Kenny knows.
And one thing I think that we have to seriously consider as a town is that I don't know how thorough the discussions were revolving right of ways when we established a 50-foot setback.
Pretty good chance, most of the wherever your telephone poles are usually right on the edge of the right of way, usually, most of the time. Because that's where they tend to put them. But I mean, just for future, if this instance came up on a town road, there is some real screwy stuff because, I'll give you an example, Eddie March's house, where that road is a sharp corner just right there by the school. Most of that road is, the right of way is actually right over by the brook. Most of that road is not on town property. Another one is Vista up by Bailey's house, Brian Bailey's house. You go by where Brian lived, you go by that driveway, and now it goes, it kind of makes a sweep and turn. The right of way actually is right in Stackhouse's driveway, and it goes way over towards the new pump house up there, and then turns. Right away. So just for future stuff, if you get this issue with the town road, it can be pretty challenging.
But right of ways aren't established by the land point as much as by the road point, unless
That's a particular development, Darrell's a development.
actually, unless the land underneath the road is owned by the person who owns the road. So, in other words, I don't know if the town actually owns any land that town roads are on, that I'm aware of anyway.
Darrell's a development, and and I've seen it on paper, the road wasn't put where it was supposed to be put.
Right, but the town doesn't own the land. The town doesn't own the land up there that's underneath the right of way. Correct. So all we do is put a road in as a town. So technically, from the town standpoint, the right of way starts at the center line and goes either way. But But my question, as a town, we haven't really established a right-of-way for our roads. Again, when you build a road, it's when right-of-way's distance is supposed to be established, and it's determined.
Would you accept in a road from a development?
So to circle back to Hannah Equity Partners, if we had Andy here next week, or at our next meeting, he'd have an opportunity to really deal with this specific issue. And, we're talking about some big issues.
Would Kenny know the right-of-way for state roads?
Yeah.
Did you see him? I just asked him. I'll see him next time I ask him.
Andy
that's-
is in contact with DOT to ask them about that stretch of road there, how, where the right of way is,
Okay.
how long it is. He's in contact.
Lincoln Road.
I don't know if it's Ken, but it's someone.
Okay.
How is the 50-foot setback arrived at? Is that
It's
part of our zoning?
It's a town zoning ordinance. Town zoning ordinance.
I know, that's why I was asking.
Well, that was put off for now.
Because some of it could be through.
Brian Shaw, I had put on the agenda. I've been talking with Brian, I don't remember the last time we addressed that, a while back. But I discussed at a prior meeting how we were kind of at a stalemate as far as Susan Chase receiving payment for the work that was done on her land was concerned.
Right.
Brian Shaw's been willing to pay the money, but he wanted some sort of release from Susan.
Right.
She wasn't willing to provide it, hence the stalemate. And one of the things I offered as a solution, and I've spoken with Susan about it, and I've spoken with Brian about it, was for Brian Shaw to pay the town the money for the work done on Susan Chase's property, and then we would pay Susan Chase for that, and then we would provide Brian Shaw with a release for responsibility of the ditch work done on Susan Chase's side of the road. And I've been speaking with Susan about it and speaking to Brian about it. They're both agreeable to it. And so at this point in time, I was just looking for direction from the board on how we wanted to proceed with it.
Is there any possible exposure or liability to the town for handling it this way?
I believe there probably is, and I believe it is, it would be exposure for the town if we don't handle it in some way.
What would be examples of the two different types of exposure to the town?
Well, I think the type of exposure that we're going to be looking at is going to be the same no matter which route we go. And it's basically, the issue that I see anyway, is that we have a town culvert going underneath the road. On Brian Shaw's side of the road, his water drains out of the town culvert and discharges on Susan Chase's property. That town culvert had been there, yet there wasn't water coming through there to any kind of great significance anyway. There had been water coming through there, but it just wasn't enough to wash out her horse path and or parts of her property. So water that's discharged from a town culvert on someone's land is the town's responsibility to carry through to a year-round flowing body of water. So we have some responsibilities there in that regard. We have given that it's a town culvert is really where our responsibilities lie. So if Susan Chase is going to, the only person that she can really come after at this point in time is the town, whether or not we make Brian responsible for that portion of the road or not. So any way you look at it, the town's responsible for the water that's discharged on Susan's property. Now, really it comes down to, well, what are our avenues for dealing with that? And our avenues for dealing with that are to address it with the property who's putting the water into our town culvert. And that happens to be Brian Shaw's side of the property. So it really comes down to how we would try to resolve that type of issue. And one of my major issues with this all along is that we reviewed and approved the site disturbance plan for Brian Shaw, saying that the work that he's done on his side of the road is, we approved it and said that's okay, we're agreeable to that. So we approved the engineering that's designed to prohibit the water from coming into the town culvert. And in my mind, because we've done that, we've assumed responsibility for that work. So it's awfully difficult for us at this point in time to go to Brian Shaw and say, you know, we're citing you for a violation of the site disturbance for lack of sufficient plans when we're the body that approved those plans. So, you know, we could do nothing, and in which case Susan Chase could try to sue Brian Chase or try to sue the town for the water discharge on her property. We would be liable to what extent we'd be liable to. If we were to facilitate the exchange of the money through the town, we would still be liable for any damage that's done to Susan Chase's side of the road in the exact same way. We're liable for the water that goes there. It's the actions that we would take once that water's there that's going to be affected by what we decide to do.
So Jay, how did that weather the storm up there? Are you familiar with how that worked over in the beginning of November there in the remnants of Sandy? How'd the cold?
Went out, didn't notice anything.
You went up there?
I'm pretty sure it's a problem solved as much
As it can be.
good as it can be.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, and this has happened before, and I know they can do it, who's to say a year from now, Sue's not gonna say, I don't want the town water dumping on my property, move it, which can be done from what I'm told. I don't agree with it, but I am told that can be done after the fact, even though the culvert's been there for 40 years.
I don't believe someone actually can do that, Jay.
I think so.
Really?
I didn't believe it, and somebody, I remember this discussion, and I couldn't believe it that was possible, but yeah, it's possible. I mean, remember we looked into it when we were up to North Hampshire Ridge, I think, with bird stuff.
Didn't the town have to pay for the repair of the driveway on that house at the bottom of the tin line on the left-hand side coming down when that culvert washed out of the driveway? No?
No.
That was about 15 years ago.
Yeah, the town did have to do that.
I mean, I guess,
And I guess well, my point about that is that issue is going to exist no matter how you deal with it. You know, that's an issue that we have to deal with. The problem we have is that Susan Chase had work done that was caused from the discharge of water from Brian Shaw's property. Brian Shaw wants to reimburse her for that.
Right.
But if he's going to pay for the work that was done there, he wants some sort of closure on the matter that he's not responsible for further work that was done there. In other words, he wanted to engineer and directly pay for the contracting. Susan Chase didn't want him engineering it, so his answer to that was, well, if you don't allow me to engineer it, then I don't want to be responsible for the failure of it in the future. So that's the dilemma that we have. And Susan Chase isn't willing to give him that release from responsibility. So we've got one party who wants to pay, but under certain conditions that aren't being met. So what I've offered is a solution to that problem, and I don't think it is.
Would this be something that,
I guess what you're saying is, Jerry, it seems how Shaw met the expectations or whatever of the site disturbance for the town of Jackson dumping his water into the town of Jackson's culvert, that you're okay with. We're basically giving him that waiver.
Waiver for any future damage on Susan Chase's side of the road.
And then if Susan has an issue, she's gonna have to come out to town.
Yeah, which she could do anyways. But I mean, the bottom line is, you know, we were aware of the work that was going to be done before it was done. We were satisfied with the work that was done on the ditch. I mean, it looks as though it's going to work the way it's supposed to. I'm talking about Susan Chase's side of the road. It looks like she's satisfactorily protected at this point in time.
And we're counting on the engineering on the other side of the road to maintain the
Well,
water flow. status
Yeah,
quo.
and so, speaking of engineering, I'm just wondering, I hate to like bring in an expert every time, you know, and incur the expense of bringing someone in to advise us, but is this something that we should ask Burr to come in and weigh in on, or?
I don't know if we really need to at this point in time. I have talked to Burr about this, and this is what I was just about to address now. He doesn't see any reason why the town shouldn't do this at this point in time. Should facilitate the transaction. And I think that there's some validity to that. You know, we don't need to. There's no really, I don't really see any, to me, there's not a big plus to do it, and there's also not a big plus not to do it. To me, it's, you know, we put ourselves in we have a messy situation. The one part that I disagree with Burr on, and this is from a logistical standpoint, not an engineering standpoint. From an engineering standpoint, you know, Burr was the one that designed, that helped design and recommended we approve the designs on Brian Shaw's part of the road. What caused the major damage on Susan Chase's property was a failure of that design, not in the design, but a failure of it working properly. In other words, it wasn't a design problem, it wasn't functioning the way it was supposed to, is what caused the original damage. That situation has been corrected from an engineering standpoint, and that hazard doesn't exist like it did when the damage occurred. So we already know from an engineering standpoint, that problem's been resolved to the best that an engineer can know that it will. So I don't see any reason that we need to look at it from an engineering standpoint as much as we need to look at it from a fairness and practice issue. You know, here, you know, and this is again why I have a problem with the way we handled this to begin with, is that we approved a site disturbance plan or site work, and so the question that I asked, well, what are the implications of doing it? What responsibilities does the town assume when we approve a plan, the work?
Yeah.
And so how, in my way of thinking, to be fair to people whose work we approved, and when we approved the plan, we're saying that we're saying it's going to perform, we're agreeing it's going to perform as it's designed, rather than looking at it from the standpoint of, we don't care how you design it and how you plan it, we want the results to be that this doesn't happen. And that when we approve the design aspect of it, then we're taking away our authority to say, to enforce the performance of it. And so that's why I brought the solution to the table and said, listen, you know, I think we made a mistake in this area, this is how we can correct the overall situation. If we hadn't approved those design plans, I'd say we could step away from this and just say, you know, this is between neighbors. You know, this is one issue between Brian Shaw and Susan Chase, they have to work it out. But the problem I see with the town meeting was that we got involved in that, where, you know, we said, okay, we're going to mitigate the differences, we're going to approve the plans that's designed to not have this happen. That's where I'm at, the same way. Jay?
I guess if you're gonna assume, take that on and assume that, which maybe you should, I don't know. Keep lots of pictures and put it in the file, because I get to see if anybody ever changed anything, whether it be like it's somehow sued, if whatever Sue built in there, if it ever got changed and something happens and then she comes after us, the town Talbot, then I'd want to keep some pictures of this one.
We do have plenty of pictures of this one.
Of the finished product, so, because that happens a lot, people build stuff and the next thing you know, they change it, and next thing you know, well, it's going different directions, and oh, it's the way it's always been, well. We went through that on Northampton Ridge, you know.
Okay.
I was just going to point out that no matter what you do, a party can still bring suit against you for pretty much anything they want to.
Right.
Yeah.
And how that suit is adjudicated is anybody's guess. I mean, I don't know how you could possibly know that. To me, that's unknowable at this point.
And I think as far as this situation is concerned, I mean, who's going to predict the future? But this was a resolve to make both parties satisfied. neither party's happy about the situation, but this is one in which, we can satisfy both parties. We can decide to do nothing and, let the chips fall where they will. And I don't think either way the town's exposure is going to be worse one way or the other.
But he was going to give you money?
Brian Shaw was willing to pay Susan Chase for the work done under the condition that she release him from the responsibility for her work performing properly. Was his work.
His work.
No, work on her side of the property that she had facilitated. Brian Shaw was originally willing to do the work and pay for that being done. Susan Chase did not agree to that. She decided to do the work herself.
And he's willing to pay for it?
And he said that he was willing to pay for that if she were willing to, on the condition that she release him from responsibility for that work performing properly in the future. And Susan Chase's attorney advised her not to agree to that. So Brian Shaw said, I'm not going to reimburse you for that money. That's the stalemate. That's where things ended. Now, where they go from there between those two people is anybody's guess.
And his requirement to give you the money was?
He hasn't necessarily made any requirements in that regard, other than he's not comfortable necessarily, again, paying that money unless he can be somehow guaranteed that he's not going to be responsible for the work that she had done on her property performing properly. And that's where the town could come in and say, we're releasing you from the responsibility of the work on Susan Chase's property performing to her satisfaction, is basically what we would do. We have that responsibility whether we gave him that release or not. So, I mean, it's kind of a moot point. It's kind of what I was trying to say is we can take no action that's not going to affect us adversely, or we can take action that's not going to change what our responsibilities are in this matter. But if we were to do this, it would be a way to satisfy the two parties involved in this one. And the reason why I would advocate for doing that is because we got involved in approving his site disturbance plans that he did on his side of the property, rather than taking the approach of...
Which in retrospect, maybe we shouldn't have done.
Well, I think that's up for debate. I think that's something that we will need to have a discussion about, because some people have argued that we should be approving those plans, and the reason why we do this is that people don't do work unnecessarily. I argue that when that site disturbance ordinance was put into effect, it was discussion was that people did not want to have plans approved by the town. And again, from my way of thinking, the reason why we don't want to approve plans is to give us the authority to enforce the performance of the work that someone does.
Well, if we're involved at that level to see this, the money change hands and Susan Chase compensated for the work through us as a conduit from Brian. I mean, there needs to be, I don't know, it seems like there needs to be something in writing somehow that's going to acknowledge this, and I'm not seeing anything drawn up tonight. Does there need to be?
There does need to be something written up, and I was going to do that, I just didn't have time this week to do it. But
well, should it be done by selectmen? I mean, it almost sounds like it's going to have some legal weight to it, and there's issues around liability and exposure moving forward. Isn't this something that the attorney should review?
I think it would be, yeah.
Okay.
I think that I could probably draw the papers up, and then have them, have us review them, and then decide to send an attorney, just to save a little bit of time.
Let's do that between now and the next meeting.
And the reason I wanted to discuss it was to see, do you want to pursue this angle?
I'm not close to it.
Yeah.
I don't know how John feels about it.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be liable one way or the other.
Yeah, right.
If something does fail,
Right.
it's gonna,
And that's why I brought her up. I mean, if there's some sort of subject matter somewhere that's ready to endorse it, and whether it's the attorney saying, legally this seems to make sense, or I'm not a subject matter expert on any aspect of this dispute or the solution that's in place right now, and so I need some advice from somebody who knows more than me. They must be out there.
Hey, Jared, earlier in your conversation, you said that Ryan was agreeable to paying the town and the town paying her, and she was agreeable to that, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Well, then by agreeing to that, then she's agreeing to the figure, and B, she's putting it in, she needs to sign a release. There has to be a release signed for both of them, and then the case is over. But if she's not willing to sign a release, you have nothing. I mean, she's willing to accept the monies.
Well,
That means that she's agreed that you fulfilled your obligation. You, the builder, Brian.
Cashing the check.
Pardon?
In other words, once she cashes the
Sure,
check,
absolutely. She's accepted it. It's over.
accepting of
But she
liability.
should sign a release
Yeah.
for you and,
But again, what should have happened didn't, so I mean, where does that leave us? And
so forget about the past, you can't do anything about that, but she has agreed to take that money. They agreed on a figure, right?
No, there was discussions around it, and as it turns out, it was two problems. One, there needed to be a construction of a ditch and repair of a horse path. And they had agreed they had discussed numbers around both of those issues. I don't remember how the math split up before, but the ditch was supposed to cost a lot, and the repair of the horse path was supposed to cost a little. And Brian was willing to facilitate that work under those conditions, under those numbers. Well, the numbers got flipped around. The ditch didn't cost much, but the repair of the horse path cost a lot. The total number is still inside the total before, so the total number hasn't changed. Again, it's just the scope of the work that was done on the ditch versus the scope of the work that was done on the horse path flipped around. But again, Mr. Shaw was agreeable to paying the money. He wants to, but he wants some sort of release from the responsibility of it. Susan Chase is not willing to provide that. And she's already paid for the work that was done. So, I mean, I guess from a practical standpoint, there's no reason why you just couldn't say, well, then,
Forget about it.
forget about it.
Yeah, that's an agreement or disagreement between those two parties.
That's right.
And if it blows up, they gotta go to court, the judge is gonna listen. And one of them's gonna win, one's gonna lose. I guess,
Ryan already paid, paid her for the work.
No.
No.
Susan Chase already had the work done and already paid for it.
Oh, she paid.
My concern from the town's standpoint is our involvement in it. And I'm trying to mitigate the town's exposure here. And if it goes to court, we're going to get involved, and that's going to cost us X amount of dollars. Because we interjected ourselves into the situation.
By approving the plan.
By approving the site service plan, we put ourselves, I think, in a tenuous situation from a liability standpoint. So the reason why I'm advocating for this solution is to avoid that. Again, it's not the amount of money and it's not the work that was done. Everyone's happy with the work that was done on Susan Chase's side of the land. Everyone at this point is content with the work that's done on Mr. Shaw's side of the land. And we're just hoping for the best that everything performs properly. My concern about those two parties blowing up and going to court is the town being dragged into those proceedings because we interjected ourselves into the situation already. So that's what my concern for the town is and why I'm advocating for this solution. We may or may not be. I mean, it's, like you said, you can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but
I guess I agree with you, Jerry, because if anything in the future happens, it sounds to me like Sue's gonna have to come after us. It's our culverts, our water.
yeah.
If we have an issue with whatever Shaw does, if he changes something, creates more water, then that's between us and Shaw. So, you're right, I think you're right, you take the gamble and solve the problem and deal with it. Because if she doesn't like the water that's coming out of that culvert, it's our baby, whether we like it or not.
And because we approved the work that was done on Brock and Shaw's side of the road, it's awfully hard for us to go after him now and say, you're putting too much water here.
I think you just solved it,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
So I'll draw up the papers, we'll have them ready for the next meeting. And my point, what I also want to say, is Mr. Shaw hasn't been not responding to this. I have had conversations with him about it because, I did receive information from correspondence for Sue saying that he's not responding to my bill at all. And he has responded to it, I have had conversations with him about it. He is going to be submitting an extension for his building permit application because he hasn't commenced work up there yet. And one of his concerns was that this was going to prohibit the extension of that. And that was one thing I wanted to address too, is do we see any reason why one thing would have to do with the extension of his building permit?
Well, it's a building project, and that's how the whole thing started. In that sense, I guess I would love to see the closure on this chapter. And it seems like if everybody wants to be reasonable about it, we can do that. And so I'd say, is he looking to submit a request to extend that building permit between now and December?
He already has, I believe, to Andy. And I think that he just needs to have him come in to see Diane yet to sign the check over something. I guess my question is, because it has in the past, we have in the past held up building permit applications because of site disturbance issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is that something that, is this issue going to affect the other? Does anybody see any reason why it was? I don't see any reason why it would, but John's shaking his head no, he doesn't see any reason why it would, so. I don't know if we're going to be able to get one issue resolved before the next, but.
Well, if we've got something drawn up that's been vetted through our attorney before next meeting, we certainly won't be in a position to approve an extension before the next meeting. Yes, so it's all the more reason to kind of expedite that forward.
I'm just going to point out that you did approve the design of his water mitigation. I don't understand how you would say that he didn't do one thing, so you're going to hold up a building permit.
We're not saying that at all.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring it up because it was a concern of his. I know in the past we've held up building permit applications because of lack of approval of site in certain places. I just wanted to at least address it and say, we've talked about it and discussed it. And I guess we'll move on from that one for now. Reading storage bins is on the agenda this evening. Andy, I guess about 3 or 4 weeks ago at this point in time, had asked me if the town should be taking any action on storage bins that are on people's properties. There's at least 3 properties that I know at this point in time that have storage bins on them. And to my knowledge, all of those are inside setbacks. Not inside, they're in setbacks. So I know 3 properties anywhere where there's storage bins in setbacks. And Andy was wondering if we should take action on them. So the reason why I brought this before the board tonight is because I'm looking for some direction on this and to see, what, if anything, we should be doing about these. And I guess from my line of thinking on this one is that we have no ordinance against storage bins on properties. So from my standpoint, I'm not thinking any actions would be appropriate to take on storage bins that are on properties until the town has an ordinance for such a thing. Since Andy asked, I was wondering what the board's thoughts on the matter were.
Well, if there isn't any language in there, then I don't believe that we have, I'm not thinking we have any kind of authority to deal with it. And if the town wants us to be dealing with things like that, they should provide us with that authority, I would think.
That's what my thinking is, but
Temporary structure It's not a structure, it's a temporary storage, it's temporary, so it's no different than a box trailer on wheels.
How long have these temporary structures been where they are in the setback? I mean, are these temporary structures, have they been in the setback for weeks, months, years?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think it
Weeks,
matters.
months, years, and I guess too, the
Temporary.
it could be there indefinitely. It's what they're considering. I mean, towns have ordinances against storage bins on properties.
And we don't.
And we don't.
Okay.
Wouldn't you consider a shed that has to meet setbacks the same as bins? Whether it has a bin look or a shed look? Wouldn't you treat it the same?
A shed is a structure. A storage bin is a storage bin. They're two different things.
So the storage,
Temporary storage.
are these like like what's lined up right now, the red box?
They're metal containers.
Where they're storing stuff right now, is there?
Railroad cars.
Is that what that's what we're talking about?
They could be, I mean, that all of them are.
Okay.
To my knowledge, all of them, the 3 locations that I'm aware of anyway, all of them are
Those
metal
structures,
bin storage bins.
Containers.
They're
But
containers too.
how long is temporary and how long is permanent? Now, if these things have been there 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that's not temporary.
Well, I mean, just as an example, the one I'm most aware of is everyone that sees that drives down Dundee Road. You drive down Dundee Road, there's 2 gray, Jay, you know what property that's on over there? The storage bins on Dundee Road.
Oh, that's Beals.
It does have been there for 5, 6 years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's got a building in it. It was done, we tore the building down in 05, 4, 6, something like that. It's got posting meeting buildings in it. I mean, for example, I got a box trailer that, if I was concerned, it's temporary storage, it's not registered, it's on wheels. We've had it, I don't know, 7, 8 years, it's been moved probably 12 times. So, I mean, you can the idea behind the container is you move it if you need to. I mean, I was wrote a building permit for a temporary shed while I'm building my house. It was within the setbacks.
What's the ordinance around what you can put in a setback or cannot put in a setback? Around the zoning ordinance, what does it say about setbacks? Can't
Well,
put anything in it?
no, setbacks, you just can't build it.
You just can't build, okay. And it seems like the homeowners have protection and,
Without an ordinance, it could get very complicated.
right.
What's the difference? You could pile furniture out there and put a blue top over it. If it's on your property, if it's in a setback, you don't have the authority to go and regulate that.
That's right.
And if you try to, without it, and if you try to create an ordinance, boy, that's gonna be a really tough thing. You're dealing with.
Because you also got the portable tents to deal with when you get into that stuff. Everybody, it's a big, the containers are a big thing these days. A lot of people are buying them for storage.
And this isn't just academic exercise we're talking about here. I mean, I know one of the situations where the storage bin is located is becoming a legal issue. And the reason why I'm bringing it up with the Board of Selectmen is just to know ahead of time what our response is going to be. And,
In what ways is it going to become a legal issue?
the neighbors are.
The neighbors.
Is this going to be an issue for the planning board then, maybe?
They can't buy new furniture.
Could be, if they want to. And again, to me, that would be something that would be more, that's a planning board issue, certainly. For as far as the Board of Selectmen is concerned, it's not a concern of mine.
Yeah.
And
I think it's pretty well tonight that it's nothing we can really do about it at this point.
I'll bring it for the.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
See what they say.
I mean, personally, I'd rather see a container like that sitting on the ground than somebody get mad and go buy a box trailer, ugly box trailer on wheels, and then you can't do nothing to them. I mean, they can register if they want.
Yeah.
I'd rather see the container sitting on the ground, at least it looks more like a shed than a box trailer with wheels on it.
Or a blue top.
Yeah. I hope the planning board doesn't go with that.
Next up on the agenda is New Hampshire Electric Co-op petition plan for burial cable on Thornhill Road. This study, you're saying, is just an extension of the one that we had before?
Yes, it's just a formal, it's formal.
It's another one. It's the second one.
The second one?
Yeah, it's just a formal, it's a formal, just a detail. It's, anytime they put a new service in, they have to go through this paperwork that you guys have to sign. It's nothing that I taught them. It's nothing to be concerned with.
I guess I entertain a motion to approve the plan for burial cable on Thornhill Road and authorize me to sign the burial plan.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Okay.
All right. Next up is the groundwater management plan from HEB. Do you have copies of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking for it now. So this is what Jay is proposing we submit, even though it's a draft. I mean, he's looking for us to approve this.
I think you can. Is he looking for us to approve this tonight, or just approve the draft, or approve it?
To approve the draft, and then he'll do
Submit.
the actual, and you can sign it outside a meeting if you approve it tonight. Or you can wait till the next selectmen's meeting to sign it. I asked if there was a deadline on this. He said there's no deadline per se.
No, it'd be nice if there was the
He
issue.
was talking about December.
I thought that there
Deadline,
was
yeah.
some urgency that you
Right.
have a permit in, but when I asked him for a deadline, because we didn't really have much time to review it, I thought I'd ask for a deadline to see if we had more time.
What he said
There
was
was
that the permit needed to be filed because it was expired in December.
Yeah.
It had to be filed.
And I think one of the things he was trying to point out is that if we don't, it's, eventually the DES can, probably take some action. Where, so I'm assuming it's not done exactly in December, probably not going to be a huge deal. But I did review it, it seems to be proper to me, so, it's,
So the signature line on page 1, which is what the third page
There's a $2,000 fee that goes with the application.
is. Okay. And who's going to be signing this as the applicant? We've got 2 signature lines there, and then the next page, page 3, there's a spot for Jay's signature, and then the permit applicant. Is that chair of the board, or do we know who's going to be signing this?
Ella?
There's only one signature line?
Yeah.
There are 2 signature lines on numbered page 1. Certification of notice to local town or city clerk.
That would be Jeanette.
And then one of them under applicant name is typed in Town of Jackson. And then there's a signature line or a date line above it. So I'm just curious as to who's going to be signing.
Yeah. No, that's just saying that this part about the town clerk, I was just saying that a copy of is given to the town clerk. The applicant is Town of Jackson, and the signature could be, so when we approved it, the application, we could, approve the application and authorize
Whoever we
the chair, whoever does it to sign it.
Okay.
Would be how that would be facilitated. The $2,000 Diane, is, I know we budgeted for this year for this, but that would put us above the budget for.
Well, we do have the capital reserve for capping balloon, capital reserve having a blue dump that's been put aside years ago, and the Board of Selectmen are agents, and I believe that when I first started working here, there was a payment made from that capital reserve, I think, to facilitate, to pay for the application for the last permit, if I recall. So there's that option.
Which would be probably the most ideal option. My only concern with that would be I want to at least read the warrant article that approves that to make sure that, because it was designed, that warrant article said to cap the balloon. And is that to physically do it or all the fees involved? I would just want to take a look at the warrant article for that anyway to make sure that it's okay to spend from that for that purpose. The only other aspect of it is we could wait until January to maybe ask HEB to don't mind having the application submitted in January so that we could get it into the next budget cycle for next year, because we're going to have to put we're going to budget some money for 2013 for this anyway. I would think be the most proper way to do it anyway, unless we have money in the line item specifically for the for what we already had contracted with HEB.
So it's not necessarily the general budget today, but there's the capital.
Well, it probably is in that capital reserve fund. It probably is in there. I just don't want
We
to.
do have monies in there, whether or not it's appropriate to pay for monitoring. Is monitoring a form of capping? Is part of capping a landfill? I don't know.
Capital reserve fund is designated for monitoring. Well, so we're wondering if capping.
No, it's the other way around. It's designated for that, but it can probably be useful. I just want to read the warrant article like we just to be sure.
I did read, yeah.
But at any rate.
Unless you read it recently.
Well, I have a list on a sheet, and it summarizes the capital reserve language for the warrant article. But I would like to actually myself look at the warrant article from the town report.
That's what I was saying, me too, before we pull it out, I just want to make sure that the language there is okay. But at any rate, one way or the other, we can improve, I think, the application.
Right.
A little bit.
And then the date is the issue that we're talking about. Whether it's going to be this calendar year or next.
So I guess then again, motion to approve the application to engage with HEB for the groundwater management permit of the Mullen Road landfill, and authorize the chair of the Board of Selectmen to sign the application when the final version is submitted.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And before I sign it, we'll figure out where and when the money's
Great. Yeah.
approved. And Bill?
Come on.
Mine may not be so pleasant as you've been, but anyway. I apologize, but I didn't get these made. You all had the privilege of reading this prior to this, but to be quite honest with you, I was a little reluctant to not just hand carry it down based on my opinion of what's happening in this thing. To make a long story short, the election went well first. I just want you all to know we had a record turnout of getting people to help after the hours. I know you probably did that, but I very much appreciate that. And everyone's efforts that got those people there, much appreciated. So, getting back to where we left off when I was here before with at that time we had an assumption of a complaint that was filed and nothing official from the Attorney General's office. Well, we received an official document from the AG's office, which you all read, and I'd like to go on record as things basically were not handled very properly in my mind. First off, and I am going to be in touch with the AG's office, but I've got probably 15 different documents here that I've gotten from the AG's office with my correct name spelled correctly and the correct box to me personally, not having to go through other agencies. This one, they misspelled my name. They had the wrong address on it. And in my opinion, it was a sensitive enough issue that it should have come certified. And that's something I'll discuss with the AG's office. The individual that sent this is Richard Head, Associate Attorney General. He's not the Associate Attorney General that I discussed all of this with. So I don't know where that got transposed, but in any event, I guess I want to go on record first off is not so much as to the recommendation they made, which I'll get into, but this is a very sensitive issue. It's been a sensitive issue since the thing came out. It certainly bothered me tremendously based on 22 years roughly of dealing with this, and this is the first real complaint. With the other complaint that was filed many years ago was a different issue, and that was dismissed as no complaint, not unfounded. This one, they've done, they didn't dismiss it, they basically closed it. But the simple fact that had this have gone a different direction, they didn't close it. This letter, and I gave you a copy of the envelope that it came in. It was Willis County Moderator, Town of Jackson, P.O. Box 336, Jackson, New Hampshire. Well, I don't have P.O. Box 336. I have P.O. Box 110 for the last almost 40 years. Unfortunately, that letter was picked up by the individual that has control of that box and stamped received October 23rd and opened. It was presented to me on November 6th and as an open envelope, which I had. And that aggravated me to begin with. And why it sat around for 14 days is well beyond me, especially given the fact that when I approached that individual, in the presence of at least one of you, and I can't remember what exactly the police chief was there, even right in that conversation, but she noted that, and it was a town clerk, and she noted, well, I thought it was election information, so I thought I should open it. She opened it, she read it, saw that it wasn't. She stated she went to your administrative assistants to decide what they wanted to do about it, and then she further stated that they did a little bit of work on their own as to the lay of the land, the boundaries, and I'll tell you, this whole thing, that is absolutely unacceptable. It is very much upset me to the point where I feel that you people need to do something about that. It's borderline illegal. I did talk to the postal department, and they said that anyone that has authorization to get that mail out of that box from the postal departments is authorized to open a letter. What happens after that is none. But this thing, we were waiting, and Diane was here the night I came down. We all said, well, wait and see. I mean, for this thing to sit around for 14 days and have other people, God knows where it went. God knows who had access to it. And I'm very upset about that. Had the AG office acted on this complaint and not closed it, there could have been a lot of information in there that we wanted to discuss. And I just feel that it has bothered me from the day it handed it to me, and I want it on record that I'm very unhappy with that fact. And this could happen again in other circumstances. But if an addressed letter comes from Attorney General, Department of Justice, State of New Hampshire, with an individual's name on it, that is an officer of the town of Jackson in some form, that envelope should darn well be put in that individual's hands. And for the simple fact that I had just got out of the hospital the day that this got stamped, doesn't cut the mustard that it should have been put in another envelope, sealed and sent to me, if that was a concern. Should have been brought to you. I'm sure you people have met at least once, if not twice, since the 23rd of October. It's extremely aggravating, and if we don't have that kind of trust, I certainly don't have. This has caused me not to have enough trust to bring this letter down without me handing it myself down here. That's where I'm at right now. So I'm sure you guys can probably see my tone as it's very upsetting. Thankfully, it's closed. We have to deal with it. It's been, and that I'm prepared to do with a few quick points, and I don't want to waste a lot of your time, but I did want you to be aware of my feelings and my concerns as to how this was totally mishandled, in my opinion, by people. And Diane called me today, and I told her I didn't want to get into it with her over the phone. I wanted it here. I wanted it on record. It doesn't matter. We had the town clerk who basically stated to me in your presence what she did and why she did it, and she involved, Diane said she had no idea. I'm not gonna get into he said, she said. I'm going to the selectmen, they run the town, that's where that should go, and if you people feel you want to address that, that's your prerogative. If you don't want to address that, so be it, but I really want you to know how upsetting this is. That said, I'm happy to answer questions on that before I move into the gist of the letter.
Well, I have concerns in that it clearly should have been brought to your attention sooner than 2 weeks after we received it. And I'm really concerned that it was not brought to our attention. And I just did a quick look back, and I mean, we had a public hearing on the 25th. That was the one about the transfer station. And we had a selectmen's meeting on November 1st, and both of those meetings were after that letter had been received by the town, and it really should have been brought to our attention. In addition to have gone really straight to you. I don't have answers to, I haven't looked into that. I do think that it really concerns me that an official correspondence like that didn't get to the party it was addressed to for 2 weeks. I can't imagine what would justify that, but I don't have answers here tonight, and I think it's important that we get some answers.
Well, the fact that if you read the content of the letter, anybody with any common sense at all realizes that, wow, this is something that needs to be passed on. And that didn't happen. As you said, at least gotten into your boxes. I'm sure that if any one of the three of you had the opportunity to get this, I guarantee my phone would have rang, or somehow, some way, you said, hey, Bill, what do you think of this? I at least had, because we had made plans. I had talked to the police department, I formulated a plan for election day, thinking that we were probably going to be confronted with campaigners as to how things were going to happen in light of this. And we certainly would have looked at that a little differently had I known this was in place.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
We've all got a responsibility here to work harmoniously together, because that's what we've been tasked with. And I can totally understand your level of frustration at having a letter addressed to you floating around here opened for 2 weeks. It concerns me too.
Yeah. All right, well, if you've got any other questions for me on that, I'll move into the gist of it. It's basically, we need to, because, and I know you guys did read it that day, and I apologize not, and you need to digest it, so I certainly don't think there's anything you're going to be prepared to comment on, but just some quick points. The very first page, the very first paragraph, everything is correct. The statement that the complainant made to the AG's office until he gets to the last sentence, where he also alleges that he was prohibited from engaging in the same activity on private property. And Jason, that is absolutely not true. And at that time, being questioned by the AG that I talked to, we discussed that issue, and I told him that I very much, short of demanding that he talk to the Jackson Police Department, talk to Chief Myers, because one of his officers was present during that whole conversation when we had that issue come up. And we clearly did not prohibit him. We basically prohibited him from campaigning in front of the town, the Whitney building. He could take it within the 200-foot rule that I've established under my authority, and if he didn't, the police department would take appropriate action. He talked about the private property, and I said I can't regulate it, but I would very much assume you would probably need permission from the landowner, which he went and he came back and said, I have verbal permission. We accepted it for that day, and I said, going forward, this sort of an issue that I would require written permission from a landowner granting them to do something to that effect because of the sensitivity. So everything else is you can read down through. They talk about the RSAs, they clearly state them, and they talk about some different United States Supreme Court rulings on it. And it's kind of contradictory because it said there's no precise distance where a state may assume with certainty that a non-electioneering zone will not be so broad as to be unconstitutional. So there's no clear direction there. They talked about the 500-foot restriction as being a burden, and the court did say that. They talked about a 100-foot rule as being acceptable, and they backed that up. But they made comment, and as I say, you can read this down the road, but in Cleveland versus City of Seneca, 2010, held that a 200-foot no electioneering perimeter around polling place survived constitutional scrutiny. That's telling me that that the United States Supreme Court is okay with a 200-foot rule. I specifically asked the AG, the only way I felt he could really investigate this is, number one, talk to the police department and get their opinion, because they were very present during this incident. And number two, I suggested that they send a representative to the town and really look and inspect. They talked about one of those court rulings, pictures, documentation. How did they rule on this? They don't know how that building looks. They don't realize that the footprint is right up to the driveway and road around the post office. They don't know that we've got a very hazardous corner out there on Route 16B. They just, in my mind, I don't really feel they can investigate this fully and without looking at it. But be that as it may, they did. And in closing, he stated that, I took issue and acknowledged that I did not remove him from private property, which we didn't do. And he's basically saying that to take it back to the selectmen, you explained the 200-foot zone has been established by local ordinance, which that's really not true. The 200-foot zone has been established by me, the moderator. There's no local ordinance saying that. The old local ordinance is to the state RSA. Recommend that you discuss these issues with the Jackson Board of Selectmen and with the town council. I have no problem. I'm more than welcome to listen to your recommendations. While I'm still moderator, I'm more than welcome to, if you decide you want to go to the town council now and get his opinion, that's fine. I take those recommendations. But at this point in time, based on everything I've done, without comments that would change my mind, I have no intention of changing my compromise, if you will, my ability to rule within the law to make a 200-foot zone. I don't feel it's going to change. On that note, I did a little more. I talked to several people within the town of Conley and the town of Bartlett. And it's like when those people go to the polls down there, it's like they're workers crashing a line where there's a strike going on in protest. They're almost intimidated to go outside. It's not, and it's unbelievable. And two people said, my God, you're so lucky you have an ordinance in town that you don't have that. We've never had, the only complaints I ever got, as I said, when people see people out there, they come and say, why are you allowing it? Because didn't we have an ordinance? We do. The thing I questioned the state attorney general on was, if this is unconstitutional, and the state of New Hampshire has somewhat agreed with that in the attorney general's office, why is it still an active RSA? And why is it still giving me the authority in the New Hampshire Election Procedure Manual to make these adjustments? That's why I feel I'm still well within that, and I don't feel it's an undue burden to stay 200 feet, given the circumstances between the post office being open, private businesses being open, that public way that goes around that building. There's no place other than either putting them on a school or right in front of the town hall to allow them to campaign anyway. And it creates a big hazard as well as giving the people what they voted for. That's why the only property we really can put them on is the adjoining town property on the other side of the street, in my opinion. That also supports my reasoning for the 200-foot rule there. So.
Well, I think that, everything you said as far as your intentions are concerned, I think, affirmed in the Attorney General's Associate's statement to you. The complaint's closed, the aspects of it done, they're not going to go further with it. The one recommendation that I see in here, or caution I guess I see in here, is that they're saying that, in their opinion, electioneers would have a problem contacting people going to the polls. And that may be true, but I think that they affirmed, through the Supreme Court decision in there, that that was upheld. So I mean, I read this and say that there's nothing for us to be concerned about as far as how we're handling the situation on voting day there. That's the legal aspects of it. I think my concerns are more from a practical standpoint. Again, it's just, we have a unique situation in Jackson where parking's always been an issue. Voting's always been an issue. Having a building that we can legally do it in has always been an issue. Now we have a building that we can legally do it in, that the town has, it's a town building that the town can use. And because of its location, proximity to businesses and to the school, the driveway situation, the parking situation, I don't see there being any more reasonable compromise than the one that we've offered. And I think that from my standpoint anyway, I'm happy to stand behind that and not be concerned about it. I did have, the last time we discussed this, I said I would ask the school what their opinion about the school property was, and Dr. Nelson did review it, and his opinion was that it was a day when there's school in session and children are at the school. It's the principal's decision to decide on if there's any electioneering places made available or not. If it's a day when there is no children and school's not in session, then it's the moderator's decision as to the use of that property.
That's his opinion.
That's his opinion. So in other words, for someone to have, in his opinion, we wouldn't even be able to give to electioneering school property if school was in session. That's a decision for the principal to make. And when school's not in session, it's at your discretion. So.
Well, see, I look at that property as being, the school and the town is one and the same, in my opinion. That if that argument held water, it would be considered town property, which would come under the statute. If if it went the other direction, saying it's not town property, it's administered and owned by the school district, to me, that would be treated no differently than private property. I would say give written permission from the school department, regardless whether it's written by the principal or whoever, the school board,
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Well, in my mind, there's a public safety issue there when you say hazard. Because I've never been to the Conway polling place, but I've seen the pictures. And I know that at this March election, there could have been a blizzard for all we knew. And when you look at the number of warrant articles that were on that ballot, to imagine people both for and against doing electioneering, to imagine people both for and against all the candidates who were on that ballot standing out front, it would just be a safety issue there for people to navigate around. And so I think there's good logic behind the 250-foot rule. And I just would like to point out that while the letter says it would be difficult for electioneers to have been able to come into contact with the voters, it did not state that the 200-foot limit is denying someone their right to do electioneering at a polling place. The letter did not state that. So
It's also a point of entry into the driveway, it can't be more visible, probably.
right. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. It's like almost impossible to pull in there
Without
or to
seeing.
park somewhere and walk there and not be aware of people
Exactly.
doing electioneering across that road. So that's my position on there. And it's a closed matter. So, but there are two issues here that require us to be involved with. There's the first issue, and I think it's really important that we come to understand and learn just what happened with that letter. And I think you're hearing from the three of us, this matter seems to be closed.
So,
Content.
you don't feel you need to run it by town council? I mean, you said either, put selectmen in, or, I have no problem with that, but if you feel you want to, I mean, that's your prerogative. I don't think you need
I
to.
don't think we're, unless we need to, so we're good.
And if any individual wants to take that further, at this point in time, it can go from the judge.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, well, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for all your support.
And I'm absolutely so proud of the fact that we have such a record turnout every time, and other towns wish they had our turnout.
Percentage,
For sure. And I would hate to do anything that would put that in jeopardy.
Well, it's the same thing as I mentioned in person, the volunteers that help make this thing work. We couldn't go without it. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a record number of people turn out to help us.
That's what my point, yeah, at the after hours, I said, yeah, that's my point, it all went well.
Thank you, Bill.
Next up on the agenda is 2012 property tax rate.
That was my consideration in like a week. It's 37 years. Doubles in the abacus.
This is something that's, I've seen for 2 years now, and I've been studying for a long time, and have a comfortable understanding of it, but always need to learn new things about it as well, because I don't know everything there is to know about it. But I'm comfortable to proceed with, the information we have anyway. But before we get into that, are there aspects of this, John or Bob, that you guys need further clarification on, or a better understanding of what we're doing? Basically, we need to set the tax rate, which has basically been set, and we have the option of, the only thing that we have the control over at this point in time is to utilize some of the unreserved fund balance to lower that tax rate if we choose to do so. So if we don't choose to do that, then the tax rate will be $10.39 going into the December tax bills, which would be 14 cents higher than the July tax bill. There it is. And what we lower, or what we establish for a rate this December will be the same rate that's collected next July. And just to give you further background on the discussion I had with Diane today, was revolving around the unreserved fund balance and its relationship to the tax rate. And ordinarily, when you look at budgeting, you're targeting a tax rate, whether or not you're trying to stay consistent with that, inside of that, if you're willing to let it go up, or you're trying to get it to go down as far as your goals are, as far as budgeting and taxes are concerned. The one thing I think that's unique about our circumstances in this regard is that we have an unreserved fund balance that, in my opinion, is far too high. It's higher than it needs to be. DRA recommends, I believe, between 5 and 15% should be held in your unreserved fund balance of your gross operating budgets, meaning for the town, school, state, and county. And for us, that's relatively $4.5 million anyway. So if we were to take, 10% of that, which is also within the Municipal Association's guidelines, they recommend between 8 and 17% be held in reserve against your budgets. If we look at 10%, our unreserved fund balance should be somewhere around $450,000. If we're looking at 15%, it should be around $670,000. 675 anyway. You know, that would be on the very high end of things. Ours is, you know, as far as the beginning of this year is concerned, with $965,529.
You've seen that? Where's that?
That is, it's underneath the solitary box in the middle.
Yeah.
Amount retained?
Yeah, and as Diane was trying to explain to me today, and again, I get it for the most part, but it's a hard thing to comprehend because the unreserved fund balance number is constantly a moving target throughout the year. And there's a lot of different factors that go into what it gets set at. But what we do know is that at the beginning of 2011, at the beginning of 2012, the unreserved fund balance at the end of fiscal year 2011, it was $965,529. And I think I'm stating that correctly, Diane? So by the time we close all the books for 2011, which doesn't happen until January or February 2012, basically, we're looking at an unreserved fund balance that's $965,529.
So that's been the
That's
amount
correct.
Right.
since we closed out the books.
So we know that,
2011.
and when we closed out the books in 2010, the unreserved fund balance was, I believe, 878.
Yes. In 2000, I don't have it on the phone.
So what's been the logic in past years for just adding to the fund as opposed to returning it to taxpayers?
Well, for a long time, we had left the unreserved fund balance high for a long time. I mean, since 2008, 2009, and 2010, we were concerned about the statewide education property tax. And we were looking at a $560,000 March bill due, and
Wanted to be prepared.
we wanted to be prepared without spiking the tax rate for the first year that hit. Well, that has since gone away for the most part. It's always going to be a threat until the legislature changes the constitution, until there's a constitutional amendment. That's something that is always going to be lingering as far as a concern. The level of that concern at this point in time, as far as retaining an unreserved fund balance to compensate for that, I think has gone away. I don't think that the level of concern there is so high that we should be having a very high unreserved fund balance. So one thing the way I was looking at this, rather than a tax rate standpoint, as far as what tax rate are we trying to hit, I was looking at this from the standpoint of, okay, we have an unreserved fund balance that's too high. We shouldn't be adding to it every year. We should be, at the very least, not making it grow. And so I'm looking at the difference between the known number in 2010 was 878, I believe, and the known number in 2012, and ended in 2011, the known number is 965,000. So we know that it grew roughly $90,000. This year, what it's going to be, what we can project it to be this year is probably pretty difficult to figure out at this point in time, but suffice to say, it's going to go up some anyway, but we don't know how much.
Right. And we've got money left in our budget in combination of what we spent, in combination of what we collect from our taxes, that would be through the tax collector. And what's not uncollected all plays into it.
But we know that it's not going to go down anyway, but from 2010 to 2011, it grew roughly 90. So one thing that I'm going to recommend is that we reduce the unreserved fund balance by $90,000.
Where'd you get that figure?
That's the difference between what was contributed between 2010 to 2011. And we can project out what 2012 is going to have left over, but we're really not going to know that number until January. So to me, if we were trying to maintain, we would be looking, next October, we'd be sitting down having a conversation about what we know the known number for 2012 to be.
Another factor that makes that unreserved fund balance grow is the amount of interest collected by the tax collector from, late payments. That's kind of like an unknown every year, so that's part of it.
Well,
We can readjust it in October.
Yeah, so October 2013.
Once
or
the numbers for
I say October,
2012.
I'm sorry, because October is usually when we started to look at this. This year, we're late on that because DRA didn't get the information back to us, but,
Or March.
so when we go to set the tax rate for next fall, anyway, the board will be able to know what the 2012 unreserved fund balance exactly was at the close of the year. But because we don't know that number today, I guess the way I would be looking at it is, we can't be for certain what what it's going to be this year. We do know what it was between 2010 and 2011. We know that it went up, and we haven't done anything about that yet. So I mean, I guess to me, the safest way of trying to control the unreserved fund balance from growing would be to go back and look at the previous 2 years' difference. And since you have those known quantities, that's the quantity you'd be looking at least wipe out so that it wasn't affecting the tax rate. I mean, so that the unreserved fund balance wasn't growing. If you don't spend more money than you appropriated, you know that your unreserved fund balance is going to go up. It just is. That's
Right,
you
just
don't
don't know how much.
You don't know how much. On average, ours, I think, has been somewhere between 60 and 225,000. That's a pretty wide range. And a lot of different factors on why that happens, and none of those factors, I believe, are for financial management. It's more just circumstances. You don't know this.
It's difficult.
There's lots of unknowns in the budget, and that's why.
Price of gas.
Well, so would it make sense to consider, capping that amount?
Well,
At a certain level?
one thing that I have put together, I didn't bring it this evening because I figured we have plenty of other things to do. And since, long story, but I have drawn up a unreserved fund balance policy for the town for us to review at some point in time. But I was going to present that after the budget season for the most part.
Does it represent some sort of a cap idea?
It's not a cap, it's a target percentage that you're looking to retain.
Anything over that percentage
You
is
would
returned to the voters.
you would automatically reduce the tax rate with, on a year-to-year basis, so that you don't have to go back to 2 previous years. It's just you establish the policy that, okay, our unreserved fund balance is going to be retained at 10%, 12%, or whatever you want to set that number at. And again, it would be a policy, but it wouldn't be something that would tie the selectmen's hands.
Right.
Or the future select board would be able to choose to do what they would want to do, but it would be more.
Change the policy.
It would be a guidance for new boards of selectmen to see, oh, this is the reasoning behind.
What's the percentage of 965?
965 would be.
What percentage is that?
That's about 22%, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe right below that number, I see that in the approximations that Jared was talking about before for what's recommended.
Yeah.
So 17 would be the high end, it's
The high end.
74,000.
Yeah. Well, why are you proposing to lower that high-end rate of 17%? I mean, you're saying 90%, that's still going to be that's still going to be $100,000 beyond the 17% number.
If we reduce it to 17 for 17, that's why I'm recommending 90.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be up for the discussion. And I guess the biggest reason why I wouldn't look at doing that is because you should reconcile that with the tax rate at some point in time. You wouldn't want to, in 1 year, use up, in my opinion, use 400,000 from the unreserved fund balance this year to lower the tax rate so much that you spike it down and then you spike it up the following year.
Right.
You know that over the next 5 to 10 years, your tax rate is going to be somewhere between $10 and $11, and you can manage that with use of the unreserved fund balance with other financial means, and then you're doing okay. And that's what previous boards have looked at in utilizing the unreserved fund balance, was kind of targeting for instance, in 2000, my first year that I came on the Board of Selectmen, we used the unreserved fund balance we didn't use the unreserved fund balance that year because the school had contributed enough in surplus that the tax rate was maintained level, which made sense then because we weren't sure where the statewide education property tax was going. Since then, we've known, and And that's why, to me, I'm looking at, well, our unreserved fund balance is too high. At the very least, we should make sure that it doesn't grow. But as we discussed before, I don't remember when that was, but this summer, maybe it was this fall, Jay and I had a conversation about a recommendation that we'd like to make to the voters in how to utilize some of that unreserved fund balance. And that discussion had been used to bring our roads back up to a level that we can maintain them without increasing the tax rate. And also going to consider the idea of using this the unreserved fund balance going towards the purchase of the grader. So that's another reason why I didn't want to necessarily drop it down too much, other than just making sure that it doesn't grow. And that what I just spoken about with the roads and the grader is really going to have to be flushed out by us, I think, as far as that's something that we're going to consider recommending or not. And then that's something that we discuss with the voters. So there's the unreserved fund balance aspect of this, and then the other aspect of this is that you need to set, do we need to set the overlay tonight?
You need to do both.
Okay, so the other aspect is we need to set the overlay this evening. Does everyone understand what that's about? The overlay is what we put into the budget to compensate for any abatements that are approved in 2013. So property assessments, exemptions, that type of thing, all get paid for by setting an overlay. And as Diana mentioned in her email, we blew the overlay budget by quite a bit this year. And that's why they're recommending that we increase the overlay from 4,000, is it, to 20,000? Which I think is a very good recommendation and one that I would support anyway.
We have some valuable businesses appealing their taxes at PTOA come spring, and we do have another one that may appeal, so that's a potential for large abatements.
The real estate market right now is volatile, and how that affects assessments and all is going to be, a difficult process to plow through. But I think
I spoke to the assessor, property assessor, and I asked him what he thought would be a good overlay amount. He felt that 20,000 was reasonable to cover, but sometimes it's difficult to control that if you don't know that you have for appeals coming.
And again, this time next year, we'll have a better sense of where, well, that shouldn't impact that to the following year, but if you set a policy for your unreserved fund balance, then overcompensating the overlay will get adjusted in the year after that. So I don't think there's any huge harm in increasing the overlay. As long as it's not impacting the tax rate dramatically, in which case $20,000 isn't going to dramatically affect the tax rate. So,
And it's $15,000 increase.
yeah, but you can use the unreserved fund balance the following year to compensate for that, right, so that your tax rate isn't impacted greatly if you don't utilize it all.
I'd like to see, just because I like round numbers, $100,000. A would, get us towards that 17%, in a small increment at least. And if that's going to be a goal in the future of 17%, you don't want to spike the tax rate from one time period to the other. I think, at least making small increments towards that over the next few years might get us there and not have such a drastic impact on the tax rate.
And Bob, you had asked before, why wouldn't they be targeting 17%? And I guess just as far as that discussion is concerned, 17% to me is still too high. It's 17%, you're not getting a whole lot for 17%. One of the things that you do with your unreserved fund balance is maintain cash flow. Town of Jackson hasn't had to borrow money to meet our budgetary needs for, I think, 3 years now.
No, that's not so. Actually, last year was the first time we didn't need to have a credit line.
We didn't have it. we didn't have a credit line, but we didn't use it
We did use it a couple of years ago.
2 years
We
ago.
used it in 2009, 2010.
We will most likely need to borrow some money to meet budgetary needs, probably not a lot. But what I'd like to know the difference of is, like, let's say, what's the difference between, we have an unreserved fund balance is $500,000. We know that we're gonna have to borrow probably $400,000, maybe once, at least once, maybe twice a year. How much does that cost us? Versus borrowing $200,000 once or twice a year. And I don't think we're gonna see much of a difference in cost there to borrow one amount over the other. When you lay that against the fairness to the taxpayer of having a lot of money sitting around that's not doing anything.
Right.
So I think big picture of things, you want to look at what's the tax, how's it going to impact the tax rate as far as where the unreserved fund balance is. And if it's unfairly high, how do you reduce it in a way where you're not spiking the tax rate one way or another from year to year? And that's the big picture how I look at it, and that's why I think that if we reduce it by 100,000, we're probably going to compensate a little bit for what's going to be unreserved in 2012, so it's not going to grow as much. I think we know it's going to grow a little bit, but I think that's probably the best chunk that we could take out of it right now, and I support 100,000 as well. So.
Well, the way you're explaining it certainly makes sense. And I like John's logic. Usually that number, there's enough there.
Well, last year we used 47,520.
Well, that was because we were being conservative about the education piece.
Okay.
I don't know where that number came from, it wasn't my choice.
No, that was to bring it to the tax rate of 10.25.
That's what it was.
Oh, that was the goal?
Okay. Last year we targeted a tax rate, and what I'm saying this year is we should try to keep our unreserved fund balance in check.
Right.
So
The focus is different.
I guess I'd entertain a motion to utilize $100,000 from the unreserved fund balance to offset the tax rate.
So,
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
125, is that right?
100,000.
100,000.
going once.
And I'd entertain a motion to set the overlay at $20,000.
So,
Second.
All those in favor?
Do we know what that comes to for a tax rate?
Yeah, I think it's $10.18.
Just 20 cents. Wow.
Well, I think one of the biggest reasons why our tax rate didn't go up was because the school budget returned $250,000. Yes, numbers as small as 1,000.
The county is flat.
No, I'm sorry, Diane, it's, without the village district, it's $10.13. So the tax rate would go down roughly 12 cents anyway.
So it's 10, 13, 1, right?
Yeah.
I just want to get it right because I'm going to tell that to DRA. So 10, 13, 1.
But you want to make sure that everybody's on that draw close.
I'm trying to save that. 13, 1. Let's see. Okay. See
We did that too for some reason. That brings us back to public comment. Does anybody have anything at this point in time? Yeah.
Just in very broad strokes, I accept and endorse the wisdom of use of unreserved funds and using the anticipated increase every year to increase that fund well over whatever your target's going to be, somewhere between, well, let's say it's 15% if that's what you're shooting for. To allow it to increase over that every year, in my mind, not smart. So to use an anticipated increase every year, at least would be the minimum, I would think we would do. And with respect to using it for capital expenditures, I also accept the wisdom of allowing the voters of Jackson to have a say in that. And then I think whatever you would do, whether it's a grader or road improvement or whatever, you know, make your best case and then see where the people stand on it.
Thank you. Anything else? Brings us on board issues, vacation policy. The reason I put this on the agenda tonight was to review and discuss and establish exactly what our vacation policy is and how it's used, mostly for employees that work 4 days a week, and whether the vacation day is a day or whether it's hours. Right now, we're tracking vacation time by the hour and not by the day. And that's not what it says in our personnel policy, so I wanted to try to reconcile those two things and kind of give direction to our administrative staff so that they can correct what we may or may not decide to do. And basically it comes down to how vacation time is tracked. And again, they're tracking it by the hour, yet in our personnel policy, it's vacation day is a vacation day. And as an example of that, like let's say you earned 15 vacation days a year. Well, by our, that's 8 hours a day, then you have 120 hours of vacation time. If you have, but if you work a 10-hour day, how do you translate that into a vacation day? That's what I think we need to reconcile. Because if you have 15 vacation days a year, then you should get 15 vacation days. It shouldn't relate to the number of hours you work. A vacation day is supposedly a vacation day. And in fact, it comes down to, it was clarified specifically, like let's say you work 10-hour days, but you only work 4 days a week. Is a vacation day hours or is a vacation day the days? And in the personnel policy, it says for those who work a 4-day work week, a vacation week is 4 days, which to me reaffirms the idea that a vacation day is a vacation day. If we want to look at changing our policy to be something else, then I think we can look at that, but I think we have to look at what our personnel policy currently is and execute that policy. And if we're going to decide to do it by the hour, then we're not executing the policy we have written, we're executing something else. And I'd like to try to reconcile that aspect of it.
Well, I think a complicated piece is if you have somebody that's not always working just a 10-hour day and sometimes working 8-hour days and sometimes working 10-hour days. But if it's consistent throughout the work week, I think our policy is clear, and I had looked at that in the past, and it says that if you're working a 4-hour or a 4-day week, a vacation is 1 day. Vacation day, so it's a 10-hour day.
And I guess we'd have to change that we're tracking it currently, because we currently track it by the hour, should we be tracking it by the day? In other words, like let's say you have 15 vacation days a year, you use 13 of those days, but by the hour, that puts you at 130 hours. Does that mean you no longer have two vacation days to use? Or does it, that's the part.
But if you're tracking it by the hour, that is what it means.
Right, yeah, but what I'm saying is, to me, that's not appropriate given our personnel policy.
You did 2 days, or not 2 days.
And I think that's something that needs to clarify. So are we comfortable with the idea that the vacation day is a vacation day, regardless of the number of hours that it is?
I am, based on what I saw in the personnel policy.
And what about, are there anybody who works 4-hour days?
Well, I think that's the complicated piece. That's where it cannot necessarily be all that simple, as if you do have people that are working different amounts of hours in a day.
A part-time person wouldn't be keeping any vacation
Right.
time.
But I'm saying, if somebody's working 8-hour days and sometimes 4-hour days, and they're working.
Part-time people keeping vacation time.
Yes.
What does it say for part-time?
Yeah, there's something in there for, you have to meet a threshold.
Regular full-time and regular part-time. Regular part-time. Employees are eligible for paid vacation time. Temporary employees are not eligible. And then further down, it says, vacation pay for a full week will be paid at the normal straight time scheduled hours. If someone normally is scheduled for 40 hours per week, the vacation pay will be 40 hours for each full week requested. Anyone normally scheduled for 35 hours will be paid 35 hours for each full week requested. And then you have the length of employment. 1 to 3 years, you get 10 days. 4 to 7 years, you get 15. 8 to 12, you get 18. 13 to 19 years, you get 20 days. Now, if somebody's part-time, you got to prorate that somehow to make it equitable. And that's not so much explained how do you, whether you're.
It's not in there, that's why I think we might want to take a look at our personnel policy to consider some changes. And we went through the same thing with sick time, but the difference with sick time is the sick time is spelled out. It's, sick day is 8 hours, and that's in the personnel policy, but in the vacation day, it doesn't say what a vacation day is by the hour. So I think if we want to track it by the hour, we need to change the policy. And the way I read the policy, that it's 15 days is 15 days. If you work a 40-hour week, you get paid for a 40-hour week. So the vacation day, if you're 4 days a week, your week is 40 hours. That's 4 days is 40 hours. So when you take a vacation day, you're compensated for your full day, regardless of the number of hours that you actually work that day. If you're part-time, let's say you work 4 hours a week, well, if you take a vacation day, you're paid for what you would normally pay for that day's work.
And that's my concern.
And it would be 4 hours, so you wouldn't pay someone for 8 hours of time taken. If you want to say that a vacation day is 8 hours, you would pay them for their regular scheduled day. So whatever the regular scheduled day is, what you compensate for them for. But you don't take a half-day vacation day. You take a full-day vacation day.
I understand that when it's that simplified, but it's not always. We do have part-time people who don't work a regular schedule. Their hours are up and down.
Then they wouldn't be entitled to vacation time, in my opinion.
They're regular part-time people, though, according to the policy.
But if they're not scheduled with a regular time, to me, they're not regular part-time people. They're irregular part-time people.
Temporary is somebody who doesn't work every week.
But regardless, I think that there's some things in the personnel policy we might want to take a look at. But as far as our current personnel policy is right now, I would say that the vacation day is a vacation day regardless of the number of hours worked. So we shouldn't be tracking it by the hour. We should be, if you have 15 days of vacation a year, then you get 15 days vacation. It's not by the hours, by the day. And that's how we should be administering our
So
policy.
do we have regular part-time people whose work week, the amount of hours they put in varies from week to week?
It depends on the work demand. For example, the deputy town clerk, she works, certain days, but the hours go up and down.
And she's part-time.
Yes.
And so how would you determine what she's entitled to for a vacation?
Well, what we've been doing since I've been here.
Averaging it out over time?
Yes, what we do is we take, how many hours that they've worked for the previous month, and we prorate it with what a regular full-time person would work. And then they would get that percentage off the 8 hours that a regular 40-hour person would earn.
And so, but regardless, I mean, this vacation policy issue is on the agenda to determine full-time hours versus days. I think we got that settled, right?
Yeah. That's what I said, so, yeah. Jay, do you have a specific question about?
Nothing to do with that, I do have a question on the vacation time, I guess. Shoot, a couple of questions that came up. If, it almost come up this year, if all four of us wanted to take vacation the same week, such as hunting season, don't ever hire employees that are interested. And me and Diane talked about it a little bit before the meeting, because I just happened to notice this on here tonight. That in the policy, it says that it's my job to decide if it's okay for somebody to have vacation, which is, I understand that, but say November, hunting season, all four of us want the same week off, which is rare, but it almost happened this year, or at least within three of us.
With power comes responsibility, right? You just have to-
So, okay, then if I say all four of us are on vacation this week, something happens.
We're in a pretty bad shape.
That would be a seniority thing, I would think.
Well, yeah, but it's still, it's especially when it comes to hunting, it's a touchy subject for people. I mean, I just didn't want to get anything where I say, okay, you and you.
Yeah, Jay, I was gonna talk to you about it, which I guess I am talking to you. I would say, I'd say to use your judgment. I mean, in November, there isn't much work to do, and that, if
You get a storm, though.
what I would say is that I'd be comfortable with you guys maybe all leaving to go hunting one day, but I want you to have a policy in place or action plan in place if something were to go wrong, that some of you be able to come back and deal with it.
Because what's gonna happen is if I say, okay, you can take vacation this year, you ain't, because it might snow or something might happen.
But the problem with taking that action is in the personnel policy, and I think this is wisely spoken, it says, the intention of vacation day is to rest and relax. You go away on vacation day and you can't rest and relax, because you may have to come back to work if there's a snowstorm. Are you really resting and relaxing, and do you get value out of the vacation day? I mean, I guess I recommend that you just wouldn't do that. You'd have to say that, sorry, you don't get to go on vacation.
But the subjects, what's gonna come out of it is we're only on call from December, the only thing in the policy about being on call is December to whenever it is. Like, it's succeeded being I understand that you dump it in my lap, which is fine. But if I make the decision, I guess if I made the decision to say, okay, I don't want vacation, and if we have 400 working here, and I don't want to take the first week of hunting season off, and whatever else happens, like a tree incident or something, then
You or your dad or Bob Davis would be the first people to respond, and everything would probably be fine.
probably.
Now,
Now, what about if somebody wants to take, there's nothing in the policy that says anything about telling you when you can take vacation. So if somebody wants to take, if I want to go to Colorado and go skiing the week in February, nothing says I can't.
well, there isn't anything that says you can't.
So somebody could take, it's never, most people don't, but it may come up.
That's why the vacation time has to be approved by the supervisor. So that responsibility ultimately falls on your shoulders. So if something goes wrong, then you're the one who's going to be held accountable. And be good people who will be accountable to it.
Well, I would imagine there's certain times of the year where you feel like you can do without 2 people. Or maybe even certain times you feel like you can do without 3 people. But I would be surprised if you said as a road agent that there are certain times of the year that the town would not be at risk to not have anybody out here. Do you feel there are times where we could get away without having anybody?
Yeah, like Jerry says, in the summertime.
Right, but that's
But that's not the season.
Yeah, it's.
Well, it's one difference between taking a week's vacation and
taking a day.
all 4 of you are gone,
Yeah.
you know, to Montana hunting for a week. And it's another, like, okay, everyone's working Friday, because we're all gonna be hunting in Colebrook. I mean, there's a big difference there. And again, it's gonna be, you know, there's judgment calls that you're gonna have to make, and, you know, you understand the risk probably more than we do. So
And by then you know the weather.
You know the weather.
So we turned everybody off a month before when we didn't know what kind of weather event might be on the horizon.
Because I mean, if you remember right, when we closed Black Mountain Road, because of the wet snow and the trucks and the whole thing blew out of proportion, because actually, it was right around that time, but it was a couple weeks before there, was went somewhere on Saturday, Sunday by myself, and something happened up on the hill, and that got thrown back in the face. They go, well, you went away and you shouldn't have, and blah, blah, blah.
Jay, I'm gonna have to leave here in a few minutes, so,
Okay.
I'll talk to you more about that at some point in time, and get through all the other stuff we need to talk about.
I just happened to see the vacation thing on there, I wasn't sure what it's about. And
Your judgment will work better than ours on that. That's for
Not
sure.
always. But yeah, I'm gonna find it hard, I'm not gonna wanna tell people that they can't take a vacation, so, whether it's 2 people or 4 people.
But, so this year you got away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a pretty rare problem. It's too bad there wasn't
I'm gonna
some
move
sort
the
of.
conversation on, because I really want to get out here in a couple minutes.
All right.
The transfer station contract bid is on here.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
We need a new one, it's time. And I think it was somewhere around $9,000 it's gonna cost for replacement. And so we need to find, if there's money in the budget this year for it, or we need to put it in the budget for next year. I can talk about that with Diane and John and get that figured out. Whether there's money this year for it or not, if there isn't, then we just put it in for appropriations for March. It'll make it to then, it's time to buy it. It's gonna be going up the longer and longer we wait, so I think if there's money now, we would maybe want to consider that, but we can talk about that at the next meeting. The agreement, I got the numbers back from Bartlett on what they think they owe us for the difference between March 11th and August, end of August 2012. It was $39,000 and change, which was right about kind of where I thought it was going to come in. They did have some problems trying to figure out exactly what one of the employees' wages were, and I spoke a little bit with Diane about that. I spoke a little bit more to her about it, and then talked to Bartlett about that. Just get that number wrapped up, but just consider that number for a little bit to see what you think of it anyway. That's why that's on there. Nothing for board policy. We've got the elderly exemption worksheet in front of us. The changes were made to it that we've spoken to last time. The only issue I have with it is a little bit confusing on the top of the third page. Please list the source and amount of all income for the current previous tax year for both you and your spouse. It's just, it's still hard to, I don't know how you word that better, but that's still confusing me.
Just get the current.
That's what I'm kind of wondering, we should just get rid of the word current there.
Your current calendar, current previous calendar tax year, is that?
Well, we're looking for the previous tax year, not the current previous tax year.
Well, the previous tax year what? I mean, it's kind of a question, I think, I think that's why it's there.
Most recent tax year?
Yeah, please list the source and amount of all income on your,
On the most recent.
completed. But then the problem with that is that, I mean, again, it's maybe overthinking it, but, you know, people have income tax returns that they haven't completed for years, so where are they gonna go back to? But again, maybe that's overthinking it. I think we just remove the word current there, we'd be good.
If they don't do taxes, then you can't qualify, I would think.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
if they don't submit the forms they want, then was denied anyway, so.
Yeah, I like that. That just simplifies it. Get rid of current.
So other than that, yeah, feel like it's one.
That, and then halfway down there, 3 different numbered bullets there before. I can't remember what the third one was, but that was not a change.
What was it about?
About halfway down on page 3, the previous draft had, well, there were 3 different bullets numbered.
Yeah, we
bullets there.
struck one.
Yeah,
You asked
I
us to
can't
strike
remember
one.
what it was, but we did strike the one we didn't like, so those are the only 2 changes I struck. So, yeah.
Then
And we got rid of
blind.
blind. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, no, it looks good. We can strike that,
Current.
strike current.
Do we strike current and improve?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. You want a motion?
Take a motion on that?
I'll make a motion that we approve the elderly exemption application revision as presented. Once we strike the word current from the top of page 3.
I have one more suggestion, maybe formatting this a little bit so the income is on one page and the assets don't turn to the next page. You do it just to fit a little bit, it won't be the same.
All
font
assets
both
on one
sides, you know,
page.
just-
Well, I can do that, it might create a 4th page.
No, you just
You want to shrink it?
Smaller font.
just to fit that one page, it'll be a little different size, but it won't be, I mean, these are different sizes here, I think.
That's
It
at least
might
a
fit.
12 font, isn't it? Yeah.
You can also sometimes change the spacing by.
Right, you can make that space and then shrink that down and just be a little,
Yeah.
I don't know. Or play with it, something to do, right?
Well, we can approve this for a final version, yeah, this
Okay.
way.
Right, the wording.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. And, I personally don't have time, I'm hoping to get out the door now, so. If you guys want to continue discussion on those, you can.
On what, the job descriptions?
Job description, I don't see any minutes.
Let's just table it.
Really?
Yeah, just table it.
And we'll table the non-public session minutes from before. Entertained motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.